The engines of the C-17 rumbled like distant thunder, a steady vibration that filled the vast belly of the aircraft. Inside, the passengers shifted restlessly, soldiers strapped into their canvas seats, heads bobbing with fatigue, others absorbed in the drone of thoughts only they could hear. The cargo bay smelled faintly of machine oil and recycled air, the kind of atmosphere that turned everyone inward. In the far corner, near the bulkhead, she sat quietly, her back straight, hands folded neatly over one another. No one asked her name. She hadn't offered it. To the crew, she was simply another passenger with the proper clearance, nothing unusual about her papers or presence. And yet, something in her stillness made her invisible in a way loud personalities could never achieve. She wore a plain coat, dark and unremarkable, the sort of garment chosen to deflect attention. Her hair was tucked under a simple knit cap, her eyes shielded by lashes that lowered whenever anyone glanced her way. The others talked, short bursts of banter about deployment, about home, about the kind of meals they missed. She did not join in. If someone tried to catch her gaze, she offered the faintest of smiles, then looked away, as though words were an extravagance she could not afford. There was no nervousness about her silence, only a kind of control, as if she had learned long ago that power often lay in restraint. The crew chief walked the aisles, checking straps, securing gear. He passed her without a second thought, clipboard ticking names, eyes moving past her like she was part of the bulkhead itself. No one asked where she had come from or why she was traveling this route. The manifest had her listed with a generic designation, authorized personnel. It was enough. The military was full of ghosts who traveled without questions attached. She was simply another one. Clouds stretched in endless waves outside, pure white under the blazing sun. Every so often, the aircraft banked, revealing slashes of ocean or snowbound ridges far below. The men leaned toward the portholes, eager for distraction, eager for signs of the world beneath them. She didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on the floor, then lifted, not to the windows, but to the ceiling, as if listening to the rhythm of the engines like a language only she understood. Hours passed in that rhythm. Soldiers dozed. Some played cards. The constant hum lulled them into a cocoon of routine, a sense that nothing would disturb this steady journey. And still she sat, quiet, patient, as though she were carved from the same metal that framed the fuselage. It was easy to forget she was even there, and yet, for reasons none of them could articulate, her presence had already begun to imprint itself on the space. Quiet people often carry weight no one sees until the silence breaks. She seemed to be waiting. Not for the destination, not for the end of the flight, but for something else entirely. Something coming. And if anyone had looked closer, if they had really studied the calmness in her face and the measured stillness of her hands, they might have realized she was not a passenger at all. She was the storm folded neatly inside the quiet. The clouds outside tore open as two dark silhouettes streaked into view, sharp as blades against the horizon. The F-22 Raptors slid into position alongside the C-17, their wings glinting silver in the sun. For the crew, it was routine, an escort, nothing more. One of the co-pilots leaned toward the window, murmuring something about how clean the Raptors looked when they rode that close, sleek predators gliding on invisible rails of air. The intercom crackled with the usual check-in, clipped words, codes, acknowledgments. Everything sounded exactly as it should. The pilots in the Raptors exchanged their greetings with the C-17's cockpit, their voices calm, professional, untouched by any sense of drama. Then, without warning, another voice cut through the secure channel. It wasn't the commander, and it wasn't any member of the C-17's crew. The sound was steady, calm, but laced with an unmistakable authority that made the air feel suddenly sharper. Raptor lead, hold formation. Do not break line. I repeat, do not break. Inside the cockpits of the Raptors, the pilots stiffened. Their fingers hovered, frozen over their controls. For a heartbeat, no one replied. The frequency was supposed to be locked, shielded, untouchable except by those who carried the right clearance and the right codes. And yet the voice they had just heard wasn't just familiar, it was legendary. Every one of them had heard recordings of it in training. They had practiced maneuvers to its commands. They had memorized the cadence, the exact phrasing, the unshakable calm. The woman behind that voice had once shaped missions that turned the tide of battles. But she was supposed to be gone. Their eyes darted to the C-17. It was impossible. The manifest hadn't mentioned her. The world had been told she had retired, then disappeared, her name locked away in sealed files. And yet, here she was, speaking directly to them, her words carrying the same authority as if time had never moved forward. In the belly of the C-17, heads snapped up. The crew exchanged bewildered glances. The co-pilot turned pale, muttering, "Who the hell was that?" The loadmaster looked toward the rows of passengers, scanning faces as though the voice might reveal itself in an expression, a gesture. And then they saw her, the quiet woman in the corner, rising from her seat. She moved with a slow precision, the coat she wore falling open as she pushed back the hood. There was no mistaking the intensity in her eyes, sharp and deliberate. She didn't need to raise her voice, she didn't need to prove who she was. Every syllable that left her mouth confirmed it. For years, her name had been spoken only in debriefings, in hushed tones, in the lore passed between pilots and commanders. A call sign whispered more than spoken. And now, impossibly, she was here, not as a ghost, not as a myth, but as a presence commanding the skies again. The Raptors held their line, exactly as she had ordered. The air itself felt charged, a tension hanging between the massive transport and the sleek fighters. The pilots gripped their controls tighter, waiting for what would come next, their breathing shallow inside their helmets. Whatever this woman was about to reveal, they knew one thing with chilling certainty: the quietest passenger on the C-17 was no passenger at all. The C-17's cabin had fallen into a silence so deep that the hum of the engines sounded like a roar. Every soldier, every crew member, even the co-pilots in the cockpit sat as though time itself had paused. The woman stood in the aisle now, no longer the shadow she had been at takeoff. The hood had been lowered, the coat loosened, and with it the mask of anonymity. Her posture carried command, not arrogance but the kind of authority that comes only from years spent in places where hesitation cost lives. She spoke into the headset she had taken from the stunned loadmaster, her tone as measured as before. "Maintain altitude. Do not deviate. Confirm status." "Raptor 1, copy," came the reply, voice tight, betraying the struggle to remain professional. The second pilot followed, "Raptor 2, holding as ordered." They didn't question her. They couldn't. Her voice, steady and absolute, carried the weight of command they had all been conditioned to obey. Still, their minds raced. How was she here? Why now? The soldiers on board shifted uneasily, eyes darting between her and the cockpit door. One finally broke the silence. "Ma'am, who are you?" His voice carried both awe and fear. She turned her head, and for the first time since boarding, her eyes met theirs directly. There was no softness in them, only the clear light of someone who had seen too much and carried it all without flinching. "Someone you were never supposed to see again," she answered quietly. Before anyone could speak further, the radar screen in the cockpit lit up. A signal, faint at first, then growing stronger. Unknown aircraft, closing in fast. The crew exchanged frantic looks, voices rising. "We've got company, bearing 090, closing speed high." The words sent a shiver through the cabin. This was no routine escort anymore. She stepped forward, calm against the rising panic, and pressed the comm again. "Raptors, prepare to intercept. Keep line tight. Do not fire unless engaged." Her orders flowed like water, unhesitant, alive with precision. The F-22 pilot snapped to it without hesitation, their jets banking ever so slightly, wings aligning in perfect symmetry. Through the small portholes, distant shapes emerged against the horizon, fast movers, shadows slicing the sky. They weren't friendly. The air inside the C-17 grew heavy, like a storm pressing down from all directions. The crew braced, hearts pounding, every nerve screaming at the tension. And yet she remained steady, a pillar in the center of chaos. One of the soldiers whispered, almost to himself, "She shouldn't be here. She's supposed to be a ghost." The woman didn't turn, didn't deny it. Instead, she raised the headset again and spoke words that sealed the moment, words that sent a chill through everyone who heard them. "They thought I disappeared. They thought I was gone. But some ghosts are meant to come back when the sky needs them most." Outside, the Raptors locked into formation, guardians at her command, and the unknown aircraft closed in. The C-17's engines thundered louder, pushing against the weight of what was coming. Inside, every passenger knew one truth with startling clarity: the quietest passenger had become their shield, their commander, their final chance. And as the distance shrank and the horizon blazed with approaching steel, it was her voice, not the roar of jets, not the alarms, not even the pounding of their own hearts, that filled the sky.